Hey everyone, I'm really excited to share some work our team has been doing on a problem that I know is on the minds of a lot of us working in the RAG space. We've been developing a new method we're calling ARAM, and at its core, it's really our attempt to answer a question that's pretty fundamental for AI.
And this is it. This is the core dilemma we really wanted to solve. With retrieval-augmented generation, we ground our models in all this external knowledge. But what happens when that retrieved information is noisy, or maybe unreliable, or even just flat out contradicts what the model already knows? This creates what we call a retrieval prior conflict, and it can seriously degrade the quality of your output.
So our proposed solution is ARAM. You can think of it like this. ARAM basically teaches the model how to weigh evidence. It gives it the ability to dynamically decide for every single token it generates just how much it should trust the external information it's being handed. We're going to unpack exactly how we pulled that off.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We'll kick things off by really defining that knowledge conflict problem. Then we'll get into why masked diffusion models, or MDMs, are such a unique and interesting test bed for this challenge. We'll cover the big flaws in the standard static guidance approach, and that'll lead us right into RM, our adaptive solution. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of measuring signal and noise, and finally, we'll see the whole thing in action.
Okay, let's dive right in. The knowledge conflict itself.
So at the heart of any RAG system, you've got this tension between two different sources of knowledge. On one side, you have the model's parametric knowledge, everything it learned during its training. It's incredibly powerful, sure, but we all know it can be outdated or just incomplete. And on the other side, you have the retrieved context you give it at inference time. It's fresh, it's current, but it can be noisy or just plain wrong. The conflict, the real problem, happens when these two sources don't agree.
Now, this whole knowledge conflict thing gets particularly interesting when we shift gears from standard autoregressive models to masked diffusion models. You see, autoregressive models work token by token, left to right. MDMs are a whole different beast. They start with an entire sequence of masked tokens and then refine everything all at once in parallel. This iterative refinement process is the key here. It gives us this amazing opportunity to constantly reevaluate the external context while the generation is happening. But it also means that the standard RAG tricks just don't work. We needed a totally new way to guide this process.
So how has this been handled traditionally? Well, the standard approach, which is called classifier-free guidance, has a critical, really fundamental flaw built right into it.
Okay, this is the standard equation. The really important thing to focus on here is lambda, the guidance scale. You can think of it as a rigid trust dial. If you crank it up, you force the model to stick very closely to the external context. If you turn it down, it falls back on its own internal knowledge. The problem? That dial is static. It's a one-size-fits-all setting for the entire generation. And this is exactly where the whole approach just falls apart. A static dial has no way of telling the difference between a high-quality, reliable source and a noisy, garbage one. So if we set lambda really high, we risk forcing the model to generate nonsense based on bad information. But if we set it too low, we might miss out on crucial corrective facts. The model is, for all intents and purposes, flying blind. This huge limitation is what led us to our core insight. The guidance scale shouldn't be a static hyperparameter that you just tune once and forget about. No way. It needs to be dynamic. It has to be adaptive. Our whole guiding principle was to give the model the power to make its own judgment call. We wanted it to be able, at every single denoising step, for every single token, to ask itself, okay, how reliable is this external info for this specific prediction I'm making right now? Should I actually trust it? To make that happen, we turned to a really classic concept from information theory, the signal-to-noise ratio. Our hypothesis was that we could frame this entire problem in these terms. The signal would be the useful information we're getting from the context, and the noise would be the uncertainty or confusion that context introduces. And this simple ratio became the absolute heart of ARAM. Now, what's really interesting is how we got here. We actually started from the Donsker-Varadin representation, which gives us a theoretical lower bound on information gain. Now, the theory suggests an optimal lambda of 1, but that's in a perfect, noiseless world, which we don't live in. So, to make it practical, we used a second-order Taylor approximation, and that let us derive a much more robust formula, an optimal adaptive lambda that is, quite literally, the signal-to-noise ratio. Of course, a formula like that only works if you can reliably measure signal and noise, and finding a stable, practical way to measure noise was the next critical piece of the puzzle. this was the next big research question for us. Our theoretical derivation actually suggested we should use the variance of the log likelihood ratio as our noise term. But when we put it to the test, we ran into a pretty big problem. And this slide just illustrates our discovery perfectly. On the left, you're looking at score variance. Notice how the red line, which is the noisy document, often has lower variance than the blue line. That's the exact opposite of what we need. Now look at the chart on the right. We found that conditional entropy gave us a much clearer and more reliable proxy for noise. A world of difference. The insight here is actually pretty simple when you think about it. A noisy or conflicting document just makes the model's predictions more uncertain. The probability gets more spread out. And conditional entropy is a direct measure of exactly that uncertainty. This gave us the stable, reliable noise meter that we were looking for. Okay, so let's put all the pieces together. Here's how this actually works in practice as an iterative loop running right inside the MDM's own denoising process. So at each and every denoising step for every single masked token, the model runs through this quick loop. First, it computes two predictions, one just using its own knowledge and one conditioned on the context. From those, it calculates the signal. Next, it calculates the noise using our conditional entropy proxy. Then, it gets the adaptive guidance scale by simply dividing signal by noise. And finally, it uses that brand new just-in-time scale to refine its prediction for that token before doing the whole thing over again. And the empirical data just beautifully proved this works. If we look at that conditional entropy plot again, you can see that clean separation. With a reliable document, the blue line, the model's uncertainty stays low. But with a noisy one, the red line, its uncertainty is consistently higher. The model can now effectively see the difference in the quality of the context. And this ability to see the noise translates directly to how it sets the guidance scale. Our experiments showed ARAM is intelligently modulating its own trust. When the context is good, guidance is high. But when the context is noisy, it actively suppresses that guidance, choosing to rely more on its own internal knowledge. This dynamic behavior is exactly how it mitigates that knowledge conflict. So the key takeaway here is this. We've developed a completely training-free method that moves our models beyond just blind trust. ARAM allows a model to actually reason about the reliability of its context at inference time, letting it intelligently weigh evidence to make far more robust and factually grounded predictions. We really believe this is a crucial step towards building more trustworthy AI, and it leaves us with a really exciting question for the future that we're all building together. As we create systems that can not only process information, but can also gauge their own certainty about it, what incredible new capabilities start to become possible? Thank you.